Um, Welcome. How are you guys doing? Welcome to the first deck tech I've ever done. So hopefully it's not too bad. I've got all my notes prepared, so if I do mess up, I need to work more on my homework. And yeah, I'm excited. Let me give an introduction. My name is Peyton. I have been playing Magic for over 10 years now. I think I started in Gatecrash, which is not super long ago to some people, but other people it's aggressively long ago. But yeah, it's been a fun journey. It's had its ups and downs. We won't talk about Eldrazi Winter or Hogak, but I will move on. Nevertheless, I digress. Let's get into the deck list. It is a draw go control deck. Um, Very slow, and I'm going to say this name very loosely for the old Magic players, but it is a Solar Flare deck tech. So this is a deck I've been working on since before Brothers War came out, and even with Brothers War being released, you didn't add not that many cards. I changed one card in the deck, and it's working out pretty well. So let's get into it, and hopefully it's not too bad. I'm sure most of you, when I said the term solar flare, do not know what I mean. It's a type of deck, it's a control deck. So, heads up to that. It's a control deck that is based on reanimating something and winning the game with the reanimate creature. It originally came out when Delver of Secrets first came out. So, now that Delver's out again, I figured it might be a good time to dethrone the Delver. You know what I mean? It's not Delver is one of those cards where it's very frustrating to lose against because it's all based on not luck per se, but like the turn to flip, getting that, and you're like, oh, of course they had the spell pierce. Just it's a very frustrating card to lose against. But this deck, I assure you, is more frustrating to lose against. So if you have a guy your LGS that just crushes you with Delver, he's just like, yeah man, I'm playing Delver for 12 years. Play this deck. I assure you, Dover will lose to this deck. And talk about the cards. Playing the cards, right? So let's do that. Um, first card. First card we got to talk about Sheoldred's Restoration. It is one of the few reanimation spells in Standard, if not the only one. Plus, 4 mana is pretty cheap, even if you do have to pay some life. But bringing back something and paying for life and like with the creatures that we bring back, you are not going to feel that life loss. You are either going to I, let me restart. The creatures life only matters when you lose your last one, right? So losing life, this is Black Mage talking right now. Losing life is not a big deal, so you shouldn't really care about it. So we're playing 4 copies of Sheoldred's Restoration. Yeah, it's got to. And you're thinking to yourself, how do we get creatures in the graveyard? Well, we were playing a lot of milkshakes. Uh, Thank you, Dev, for telling me about milkshakes. And one of the first ones I really want to talk about is Vohar. Vohar, amazingly powerful card. Do not think of it as a merfolk looter, but really think of it as like a really slow Snapcaster mage. And what I mean by that is it feels like a Snapcaster with like suspend one, right? You pay 2 mana to play it. Um, they might kill it or whatever, but then next turn you pay 2 mana, Snapcaster mana, and play one of our spells from the graveyard. So in reality, it's a really good glue piece, not only because it milkshakes, but it also keeps up the idea of controlling things. So if we need to Void Rend 2 things, we're playing 3 copies of Void Rend. We can Void Rend something, sacrifice Vohar, Void Rend another thing. That usually gets it done. I mean, even against Grixis and things like that with 2-for-1s and maybe even 3-for-1s with Restoration of Kiki Jiki or whatever that card's called. Yeah, it's Vohar is a very important card to this deck, and honestly, the ping is negligible. The draining of the life is very negligible, but it can make a difference in a game. You know, sometimes they're at 2 and you discard a syncopate, right? So we discard a syncopate, they're at 1, draw for our turn, draw with Vohar, discard something, they're dead. So Vohar, immensely important card for the deck. What else are we going to talk about? Oh, another milkshake, very important. Tainted Indulgence. I remember when this card first came out, people were like, it's the best card in Standard, it's going to be the best card in Modern, it's going to be the best card in Legacy. It's fine. You just really have to use the graveyard, which thankfully this deck does. 2 mana instant speed, we can leave up Syncopate, playing 4 copies of Syncopate. So turn 2, we leave up Syncopate or Tainted Indulgence. So one of those things where a good control deck always has something to do on turns 2, 3, and 4 at instant speed. So you can leave up Counterspell, leave up Kill Spell, and Tainted Indulgence is one of our only card draw spells. Yeah. Alright. Counterspells. I already said we're playing 4 copies of Syncopate. We need more counterspells than that. We're playing 3 copies of Dissipate. A little slow, a little old-fashioned. It's one of those, you just gotta play it. I was playing Urza's Rebuff, the counter or tap 2 things. It's not as good as people want you to think it is. It's really not. Because honestly, I use it most of the time to counter the spells, and this deck really needs it to counter the spells. You can steal some games by tapping 2 of their creatures down and attacking with one of the big fatties, but Exile is king in a world of tenacious underdogs. Oni Cold Anvil, any of those things. And Kamigawa Dragons reanimate. Just random little things of just like dissipating that and then never having to worry about it again. Really, really nice. And when you're playing this control deck, you really don't want things to like slip through the cracks of counting their tenacious underdog and then bringing it back. You know what I mean? So really getting rid of something makes a huge difference. And even with the soldier decks do a lot of stuff with the graveyard with maybe not a lot, but like the 1 mana dude artifact, this guy, yeah, it really helps a lot to exile things. So I know it's boring, but we got to play the counter spells because we are going to be the control deck. And I touched briefly on Void Rend, playing 3 cups of that. Gotta play Void Rend. Void Rend gets Restoration of Kiki Jiki. It gets Sheoldred. Sheoldred's a rough one. It gets all the soldiers. Can't be countered. What else could you want? It destroys any non-land permanent, so even if someone melds Titania, or if someone melds Urza, or something like that, you're probably going to lose. I don't... But you can still kill it, right? It's really nice, and I'm surprised that Wizards let this be an instant speed. I would have thinking, as an older Magic player, I would have thought this would have been a sorcery speed thing, because it makes sense, whatever, but it's Esper colors, so it needs to be instant speed, which is awesome. Awesome. We need instant speed removal. And then going along, Void Rend, we're getting to our first reanimated target, Ertai. I don't know if you've ever played against Ertai. one of the most frustrating cards to play against just because of the flexibility of just killing something or just like countering it altogether. I know the opponent gets to draw a card, which isn't great for us, so we're only playing 2 copies. But killing anything and getting a 3/2 really helps when we're not playing a whole bunch of creatures to begin with. And, you know, bringing it back, turn 4. Turn 4, if you play this from your hand, Ertai, trade it off, and then you can reanimate it with Sheoldred's Restoration, kill another thing. They drew 2 cards, but you really have control of the board now. So it's Ertai is a very frustrating card, and to newer players it doesn't seem that good, but to older veteran players, a very, very key piece of this deck. If you I encourage everyone to make changes to this deck, but please at least try playing with Ertai. I think a lot of people forgot how frustrating it is for someone to, well, like even just imagine the soldier deck. They're playing soldiers, so they play turn 1 artifact dude, this guy, forgot his name. Turn 2 Valiant Veteran, turn 3 Siege Commander. That's the one, right? That's a rough start, but Ertai really helps you because you can kill not only the Siege Veteran, but you can also trade that off with the Valiant Veteran if they were to attack with it, or with the Artifact Dude. It's such a key piece in this deck, and it's one of the reasons I kind of made this deck. This is the point where the deck's starting to form. It's starting to take shape. We're starting to see how this deck forms. A really key piece to control decks and changing the direction of how this deck goes is rest. We need mass removal. We need anything we can get that destroys more than one thing as a control deck to get card advantage. There are a couple options. You can play Karn, Silex. You can play multitude of other things. You can play Farewell if you want, but we're playing Path of Peril just because of the fact that we also need our graveyard. So Path of Peril is really good against those super low aggro decks, soldiers, um, any other Delver. It's also fairly decent against Delver. Yeah, it's really good. It's a little mediocre sometimes. It's not as good as other mass removal, but honestly, if you need a mass removal spell, turn 3 Path of Peril really saves you from a lot of other stuff against like soldiers, Delver. Well, soldiers decks they go like they have draws where they have like 2 lords or something like that. You can pay 3 mana Path of Peril and kill everything, and you feel unstoppable at that point. It's one of those. If you've never played a control deck and mass removal to everything, you feel like you can't win, even though there's things that do things from the graveyard, come back, have abilities that come back from the graveyard, do things like that. Getting rid of like 3 things for a card is ridiculous, and so we need to play Path to Peril. Yeah, Path to Peril. Great card. You know what else is also a great card? And the only Brothers War card that we're playing, Hostile Negotiations. I originally was playing Memory Deluge just because it's a card that digs deep, dig through time. I love playing with dig through time. It's kind of where the peak of my Magic, or like the start of my Magic career, maybe not even career, but like the start of my like FNM was playing with and against dig through time, Citranos, things like that. So dig through time has a special place in my heart, and it's busted. Memory Deluge is not as good as dig through time. I know everyone knows that, but it's not as good. And when I was playing with it, I was just like, 4 cards isn't that deep. It doesn't even go in the graveyard. And then Brothers War came out with Hostile Negotiations. Fact or Fiction is such a tilting card for your opponent just because of the fact that he or she or they, it, Ertai. If you're playing against Ertai, it's a them. So we all know that. Your opponent it really gets into the head. And as a person who's like studied psychology and things like that, just getting their idea of what three cards you need is really really interesting, because a lot of times people, I don't want this to sound wrong, but 99% of the time people will give you the wrong choice. By that I mean, you show like Dissipate, Path of Peril, Land, or whatever, and the other three cards are Land, Sheoldred's Restoration. They're probably going to give you Land, Sheoldred's Restoration just because they don't want to play with that. But Sheoldred's Restoration, getting that, plus dumping the three cards into the graveyard, which adds to Tainted Indulgence, it adds to Sheoldred's Restoration, it adds to so many other things that this deck is trying to do, that it's the perfect card draw spell. And like I said at the beginning, the life loss is negligible. You will feel it, and I hope you do side this out in game 2, game 3 against aggro decks. But yeah, originally I was playing Shadow Prophecy, which is also a terrific card. I really wanted to squeeze in some Shadow Prophecies in this deck, but Hostile Negotiations really takes the cake for it, just because it's instant speed, drawing 3 cards. It's the highest you can get with Hostile or Shadow Prophecy to begin with. So yeah, it's Hostile Negotiations, one of the one of the best cards from Brothers War. Not my favorite card. Favorite card is Shadow thing. This card, 2 mana, exile all creatures. Also, really wanted to play this card, but wasn't able. It didn't fit the theme, and but I will be building around this deck or around this card. We need to talk about what Sheoldred's Restoration is getting back. You can get back Ertai, right? Great card to get back. One of the best cards to get back. You can get back Vohar. Also a terrific card to get back, of sacrificing, destroying a thing, getting it back, sacrificing it, getting it back, destroying something. You know what I mean? But we need some ways to win. When I was playing this deck, I was like, what is a big, dumb creature that costs cheap and works with the graveyard somehow? And I was playing with Mire Crab. Not it. Just a 5/7 ward 3 is fine. But I really wanted evasion. None of the other creatures really have evasion. So it's gotta have flying, it's gotta have unblockable. Creature came up to play is Kairi, the blue Kamigawa dragon. Plus, it works really well with the control theme. Slamming this down, turn 6, and your opponent really can't do anything. If they kill it, you can bounce other things, or you can return like a Dissipate and a Void Rend, right? And what are they going to do about it? They wasted a card to kill your Kairi, and even if it's not exiled, you can bring it back with Sheoldred's Restoration. So just looping this card over and over again is a good way to win. Plus, the flying really helps. There's really not not any other way to sneak in for damage or attack. Control decks, especially this slow of a control deck, you want to slam something and win, right? Decks, I don't know if you remember 4 or 5 years ago, but decks of playing like Teferi, you play that card, you win. Or even older than that, my favorite was Approach of the Second Sun. Not a very good card, but it was also a I win card. Before that, Sphinx's Rev, a beautiful control card. But this is our finisher, Kairi. It's a little boring. It's a little. I just got into Magic, I guess. It feels weird playing this really thought out deck and this really time consuming deck. I've spent at least a week building this deck, playing it, seeing what happens. And my best answer was Karai. It just works so well with the control theme and being an invasive big dragon. Ward 3 is huge. Ward 3, massive. Trying to think, even if they do like Infernal Grasp, they have to spend 5 mana on it. Decks that play Infernal Grasp might not get to 5 mana, or might not even play Infernal Grasp. So if they play a 3 mana thing, a 3 mana removal spell, they're paying 6 mana. It's such a huge advantage to get War 3 that it kind of flies under the radar. It was one of those afterthoughts after playing Mirror Shell Crab where I saw how powerful Ward, I think that one's a Ward 2, right? Ward 2 is not very effective and strong, but Ward 3 really, the extra mana really helps it. Just making it at least 4 mana to do something to it, or 3 mana if they're playing like a Planeswalker effect, like a Wandering Emperor, right? That's the name of that card. The Samurai. Wandering Emperor, great card also. But yeah, they want to theoretically try to remove it. You attack with Karai. They slam down Wandering Emperor. They try to kill it. They need at least 7 mana to do that. And at that point, don't. You should have Dissipate. You should have Void Rend. You should have something to kill it, right? So Karai, 2 copies of Karai. Also 1 copy of Hullbreacher Horror. Just control deck finisher. You could play 2 copies of Hullbreacher, 1 copy of Karai, or just 3 copies of Hullbreacher. But you should really try out Karai. It's like I said, it's a sneaky good card, and it's one of the perfect homes for it. Last card we're talking to main deck. We can talk lands, but it's lands. Last card I want to talk about is Obscura Charm. We're playing 2 copies of that. I really wanted this flex slot to be kind of. I really wanted another removal spell. But Infernal Grasp didn't feel right. Hero's Downfall didn't feel right. The Soul Transfer didn't feel right just because of sorcery speed. And Obscura Charm works really well in this deck. Just bringing back Vohar over and over again. Remember that loop I was telling you about? The Obscura Charm brings back Vohar. So if you need to, you can, for whatever reason, you can bring back Vohar's in your graveyard. You have Obscura Charm in hand. Obscura Charm, bring back Vohar, sacrifice Vohar, get something from the graveyard, and play that spell. Right? Doesn't that sound fun? That is a super fun time, and I don't understand why this card doesn't see more play. The removal's fine, right? It's a kill something. It gets Tenacious Underdog, it gets all the soldiers, it gets Kiki Jiki, gets whatever you really want to kill. Just doesn't get big things. And the counterspell aspect of it is also very nice. It's this card is house against Delver decks just because it counters instant sorceries, plus it kills the Delver. So really, really good against Delver decks. I don't understand how they beat this card. I guess Delver can like side in counter spells or whatever, but yeah, it's terrific card. 10 out of 10. At least play a couple copies. Yeah. Okay. Lands. Play lands. 26. Keep it at 26. Don't try 25. You a thing a lot of newer Magic players do is try to like shave a land and play like another card draw spell, another whatever. This deck really wants you to play land for the first 7 turns, just so you can get to Sheoldred's Restoration with a kicker. 7 lands, you got to get to that. I found 26 to be good. You can, if you want to play 27, go for it. That's that's a lot. 26 is a lot. 25 is fine. Maybe You can always shave a land if you're playing against like aggro, sideboarded in a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's 26 lands. Play 26 lands. Um, when I was playing Shadow Prophecy, I played the tap boring dual lands that have basic land times. You don't have to play that now, but this deck's so slow you can play tap lands. Just 26 lands. Just play 26. Um, yeah. All right. Sideboard. Sideboard. All right. Sideboard. I, sideboards for decks are so weird. So I'm not going to give you an exact 15. I just want to give you some ideas for this deck. All right. Sideboard. We were talking about sideboard, right? So sideboard. I don't think I'll ever give uh people who watch the deck text viewers. I don't think I'll ever give you a full 15 card. This is what you need. Only play these cards. I'm going to give you some stipulations just because a sideboard's just uh not logistically, but I guess theoretically could be changed for whatever you want. If your LGS has a lot of Dover and like mono blue spells with the Jin and the Tolarian Terrors and the Ops and the whatever, you might want to lead towards more counter spells, such as Negate. You want to play Negate? You can play Negate. Uh, I personally have written down some cards, so let me give you some heads up to see what I told you what works or not. Defabricate, new card, Brothers War, really good against any sort of like artifacty decks, just because Brothers War came out, so there's going to be more artifacts and things like that. We're going to need at least Defabricate. Try a couple copies. Exiling artifacts. We've been over this before. Artifacts and enchantments, though, very, very good. Um, Nimble Larcenous, I think this card, this one right here, really, really good against mid range cards. Just because the ability to 3 mana just to snag something, exile it forever, and it doesn't come back when they kill it, which is muy bonito, muy good, very good. It's very good with Nimble Larcenous. I think that's the name of the card. Um, that the card just a 2/1 flyer is whatever. It's a fine body. I wish it was a 2/2 flyer, but it might be a little too strong. But 2/1 flyer, it can get into planeswalkers if they don't have a flying protector. It could block something. It's totally good. Plus, with the added benefit of Obscura Charm, whew, getting this thing back at a turn, snagging something else, killing the planeswalker. Oof, it's very, very, very good. Um, Other sideboard options, Sheoldred. If you are made of money and you don't care, Sheoldred's always a good one. We can get her back with Sheoldred's Restoration, um, which is kind of like a knockout blow to any sort of decks that don't have 2 removal spells, which is kind of a lot. But I, as principle, I don't want to play the best card in Standard just because it's boring and everyone always plays that card. Um, yeah, Sheoldred's really good. Negate, always throw in a couple copies of Negate, always very good. The new Thoughtseize type effect, like Blood of Oil and Steel or whatever it's called. It's very, it's very good. Yeah, it's weird, but this Blood Steel one, exiling, been over this, exiling something from their hand plus something from the graveyard is really good. Um, yeah, I would recommend some graveyard hate, preferably nothing that gets all graveyards because we need it. So maybe like an unlicensed Hearst. The white card that exiles all graveyards, you can rebuild from that. It's no big deal. Um, some other fatties might be good in the sideboard too. I had a Toxicryl or Toxrill, the big slug, in the sideboard. Just for like mid-rangey creature-y matchups. I really didn't want it in the main deck because against things against decks without creatures, it's kind of sucks. But against any other deck with creatures on it, very, very, very good. So maybe try a Toxrill, another Hullbreaker Horror. That would be really good. Karn Silex, I feel like is a good one just because it gets everything. Plus, you can tap out turn 3. We're not playing a whole lot of 3 drops, um, and we don't mind tapping out for turn 3 just to have some safety. It'll be the end of first deck tech. I think next week I'm gonna try and give you guys a soldier deck, something with a little more pizzazz than boring soldiers. But next time I'm gonna give you a soldier deck, and here in a couple days I'm gonna try to do a top 10, maybe top 10 most annoying cards in Magic. But till next time, have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.